Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
Who to you are some of your heroes of the South, or some of your kind of valiant men in the South that you have studied up on, or that are interesting to you, or even that are respectable to you?
Sure. Yeah, I think I love guys like I love Jeb Stuart. He was a Virginia-born, high-class born guy. He was the command general over Lee's cavalry in the Civil War, and he was this extravagant character that he was very much a cavalier. So he had an ostrich plume hat, and he had a red shawl, and he would make sure he looked great before he went into battle. It's kind of old-fashioned character. He was very popular in Europe too. They loved him in Europe. And when you learn more about these guys, they become, you can see his hat there. But he's
holding it on his lap.
He was 31 when he died, and in the war he was 29, but you learn about these guys, and they're just amazing, larger than life characters, and we know they are. But when you learn about them more, it's not dispelled. They're mythic on both sides, and the South has a lot of them like that. But he went to did he go to VMI or West Point? But he loved Shakespeare. And he was in like the Shakespeare club in school. So you have these guys, these like lovers and these fighters, like these full men that we miss so much in nowadays when we try to understand what it means to be a man. Like we see both ways too much. Like there's very passive, no backbone, and the guys that are too macho. But these guys were like these full men that were well versed in literature and art, but like were total. Great fighters. Yeah. So one of the great his whole story of his death is wonderful because he was right outside of Richmond. It was 1864 at Yellow Tavern, but he had just met his wife the day before, and then he was in a cavalry engagement with Phil Sheridan and way outnumbered. So right when he was leaving the battle, a dismounted Union cavalry took out his Colt army and took a pop shot at Jeb Stuart and got him right in this, hit him right in the gut. And so he had a gut wound, and he was rushed back into Richmond and just bled out for a day. And his wife couldn't get into Richmond and see him. And I remember he said, when he was on his deathbed, this is the cool things too about why the Civil War is great, because there was such a Christian aspect to the Civil War on both sides. So being a Christian is really cool to learn about that because it's so prevalent. It's like it's one of the major parts of the war of how they saw themselves that way. So he insisted, can someone please play or sing Rock of Ages for me, because it was his favorite hymn, right? And so we know that if you understand the hymn Rock of Ages, like what it's saying, you know the Lord.
Yeah,
like it's so perfect in that way, and he wanted to desperately hear Rock of Ages. So he did, and then I think he just said his last thing he said was, "My service is complete, and this is the will of God," and he died in that way. So and it's amazing pictures of faith, even fighting for a side that had a terrible cause, but found him as a Virginian fighting for his state and doing what he was supposed to do. And then I know his wife couldn't see him, and she didn't get to see him before he died. And then she was in mourning for the rest of her life. She was young in her 20s, and she was known to wear black the rest of her life. Never remarried. Never was over that mourning. She was in mourning the rest of her life, and like those kinds of love, they didn't read self-help books on how to have a good marriage or how to love one another really well. They just seemed they could do it, and they embraced tragedy. They embraced sadness. I mean, there's these amazing characters, man. But
so when you have a guy like Jeb, and I see those are initials for something,
yeah,
right?
James Ewell Brown Stewart, yeah.
Oh, strong name.
James Ewell Brown, yeah.
So when you have a guy like that, and he's fighting for his state and his side, and he's doing it bravely and valiantly, and in a lot of ways, he's probably doing it like as part of his services to the Lord, right? Like he feels like there's a duty there that was asked of him, and so he's going to go fight.
Yeah.
And then on his deathbed, he wants to hear Rock of Ages.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a statue on him or not, but if there was or if there is,
Right.
like the prevailing sentiment right now is to go rip that statue down,
Sure.
right? Because he was on the wrong side of history, is
Right.
what people would say.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. You want to read that, Andrew? That quote? That's a great one.
This is an account of his last moments that I've highlighted. As his aide, he's been wounded at this point, he's dying. As his aide, Major McClellan, left his side, Confederate President Jefferson Davis came in, took General Stuart's hand, and asked, "General, how do you feel?" Stuart answered, "Easy, but willing to die, if God and my country think I have fulfilled my destiny and done my duty." His last whispered words were, "I am resigned. God's will be done." He died at 7:38 p.m. on May 12th. The following day, before Flora Stewart, his wife, reached his side.
Yeah.
He was 31 years old.
Yeah, isn't that cool? And it's like we all want to die that way, right?
We do,
right?
yeah.
Like we all want to be our last quotes, a sediment of faith in God. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So
it's so touching.
it is.
You know?
And it's so, you read about there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories like this. And it just goes on both sides. It's just the most amazing thing in the world. Not to everyone, but man, I love it. It never ends. But to what you were saying about the statue thing, well, there was a statue of Jeb Stuart in Richmond. It was just taken down maybe last month. There's a hall of statues. It was a big 40-foot, 50-foot statue of him on a horse, and they just took it down. So I think with everything there should be a compromise. I think the greatest compromise we could do for those statues is taking down the political figure statues. Like if you were to take down I understand taking down Jefferson Davis, but there needs to be some kind of charity given to these generals and war fighters that were fighting. Just they didn't have political bones in their bodies. There would be reporters asking Lee, and he just, I don't really care. Like it wasn't about the politics. These guys weren't political guys. Some of them became political guys after. Some of them became, but a lot of them weren't those guys. Their art was war. Their art was being a soldier, and so there's something. So they were being an American soldier in that sense, and so there's something to be respected in that way. But they became these like figures that were part of like that lost cause mythos. So it's hard, but they're non-political actors. So taking like PGT Beauregard or Jeb Stuart, it's like, well, they were just fighters. Mm-hmm. And I get taking down a Confederate president. That makes total sense. Mm-hmm. But
in a situation like Jeb's statue, where was that and where did it go?
So it was in the middle of Richmond, like in the middle of downtown. There's like the Hall of, what is it? It's like the Hall of Statues, and there was all these amazing, like these big, amazing statues. I think Lee's is still up, but they're going to take it down soon. They might have taken it down, but so there's all these statues of all these like generals and stuff of the war. And so
where do they take them?
That one is in storage right now. And so I think there's like a historical society, Jeb Stuart's historical society, that wants to get the statue. They'll put it at his gravesite, I get probably, which will be in a field somewhere, in a battlefield outside of Richmond. So it won't be in the middle of Richmond. It'll be in a historical battlefield, which is probably where it should be. Makes sense. And obviously the idea too is that a lot of the people that put up those statues were part of that lost cause narrative, that they wanted to preserve the South, that South did nothing wrong and that kind of stuff. So the context of the statues were important too, you know, even though the statues themselves, the person that it represents maybe wasn't that, but the person that put it up was. So that's part of it too. I think putting them in historical places, I think too, most people don't even know who Jeb Stuart is and have no idea who he is. And most people don't care about historical stuff anyway. So that's maybe the biggest tragedy is these statues don't mean anything anymore, or what they were supposed to mean. I don't know. But.
Yeah. There's an African proverb that goes something along the lines of, if you don't initiate the young, they will burn the village just to feel its heat. And we may be dealing with a little bit of that right now.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know.